Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting into something fascinating. It's science, sure, but also politics, power, and just pure human ambition. We're talking about NASA and SpaceX. Our mission here is to really unpack how Elon Musk built this private space empire that's now, well, kind of essential to America's space program, and how political clashes, especially between Musk and Donald Trump, might be shaping where we go next. And bigger picture, what does all this privatization of space actually mean for us?
Yeah, it's a great topic. And the real core tension, I think, the thing we'll keep coming back to is how those lines between public and private are getting so blurry out there in space. It's more than just rockets launching. It really digs into, well, who governs this? What are the ethics? Who gets to decide humanity's future beyond Earth? It's profound stuff.
Definitely. So, okay, to really get a handle on this, let's start with NASA. Where did it all begin? The National Aeronautics and Space Administration kicks off in 1958, right smack in the middle of the Cold War, the space race with the Soviet Union. It was funded entirely by the U.S. government, by taxpayers, and it quickly became this huge symbol of American tech power, American science, pushing boundaries like crazy. And for decades, NASA was basically it. They put the first person on the moon, 1969, iconic moment, right? Developed the space shuttle, sent probes out, exploring the solar system, deep space, and a lot of tech we use every day, like GPS, satellite comms. NASA was key to that foundational work. For a long time, if you said space, you meant NASA. They were the ones. But then things started to shift. Early 2000s, enter Elon Musk, this tech billionaire, already famous from PayPal and Tesla. He starts SpaceX in 2002. And his vision, it was incredibly audacious, make humanity multiplanetary. He was talking about a Mars colony.
Seriously.
And here's the kicker, the thing that really starts shaking the foundations. SpaceX is private, funded by investors, by customers, not taxpayers. That's not just a new company entering the field, it's a whole new model.
Absolutely. And it wasn't an easy start for them either. You have to remember, SpaceX faced some pretty serious early setbacks. Their first rocket, the Falcon 1. It failed 3 times before finally getting into orbit successfully in 2008. 3 failures. That's...
Wow, yeah. Make or break time, I guess.
Totally. But that same year, 2008, NASA did something pretty bold. They took a risk. They awarded SpaceX this major contract to deliver cargo to the International Space Station, the ISS. That contract, honestly, was probably pivotal. It gave them the funding and the credibility they desperately needed.
Okay, so NASA basically threw them a lifeline, in a way.
You could see it like that, yeah.
Yeah.
A calculated gamble.
Yeah.
And it paid off. From that point, SpaceX's rise was, well, meteoric. By 2012, they were the first private company ever to dock with the ISS. Fast forward to today, and they're NASA's main partner for launching pretty much everything cargo, astronauts. And that huge milestone in 2020, remember that? Crew Dragon launching astronauts from U.S. soil.
Oh yeah, first time in almost a decade since the shuttle retired. Ended the reliance on Russian Soyuz rockets.
Exactly. A massive shift in American space capability, driven by a private company.
So how did one company, manage to basically rival the agency that owned space for half a century? What's the secret sauce there?
Well, a lot of it boils down to this startup mentality people talk about. But applied to rockets, which is kind of nuts.
Yeah.
SpaceX moves fast. They're agile. They iterate constantly, build, launch. Maybe it fails, fix it, launch again. Very quick cycles.
Okay, so like Silicon Valley speed, but for aerospace?
Sort of, yeah, which is a huge contrast to NASA. Yeah. NASA's a government agency, right? So it's tied to federal budgets, politics, oversight committees, layers of procedure. Red tape, basically.
Which slows things down. Makes sense.
It inherently does. SpaceX doesn't have those same constraints, allowing them to innovate and sometimes fail much faster.
Right. And that speed leads to breakthroughs like Starship.
Precisely. Starship, the most powerful rocket ever built. Designed to be fully reusable, aiming for Mars.
That reusability part is key, isn't it? Something NASA never fully achieved with the shuttle.
Not fully, no. And that's where SpaceX has really pushed the envelope. But this rapid success, this power, it creates a new dynamic, a tension. NASA is now, frankly, quite dependent on this one private company and arguably on one CEO, Elon Musk, for its most critical space access.
That's a really interesting point, the dependency.
It is, and Musk's influence goes beyond just launch. Think about Starlink. Thousands of satellites providing internet. We saw it in Ukraine, right? Starlink providing crucial internet connectivity during the conflict. That's geopolitical influence.
Yeah, incredible power for one person, one company. to wield.
It absolutely is, and it raises serious questions, security questions, ethical questions. Who controls this infrastructure?
And that level of influence, especially with someone as vocal as Musk, inevitably spills into politics, doesn't it? Let's talk about that political angle,
Huh.
especially the Musk versus Trump stuff.
Yeah, that's become a really fascinating subplot. Musk's political voice has gotten much louder recently. He takes pretty hard stances on things like immigration, the media, AI safety, free speech. Obviously, buying Twitter, now X, was a huge part of that.
Turning it into a platform for, well, much less filtered expression.
Right. And then there's a relationship with Donald Trump. It's evolved or maybe devolved. Musk was, kind of an informal ally during Trump's presidency, served on advisory councils for a bit.
Right, I remember that.
But he's really distanced himself since then, especially heading into 2024. He publicly criticized Trump's leadership, his behavior, and flat out said he wouldn't support him for a second term.
And Trump being Trump, how did he react?
Predictably, I suppose. Insults, threats, even suggesting maybe Musk's company should be investigated by the government.
Oof. So actual political heat there.
Definitely. Which leads to the big question. Could this personal feud actually impact the space program?
You think it could?
It potentially could, yeah. Imagine if Trump wins re-election. Could his administration retaliate? Maybe cut SpaceX contracts, increase regulatory scrutiny, push NASA towards other providers, even if they're not quite ready.
Wow, that would cause chaos, wouldn't it, given how reliant NASA is now?
It would certainly cause disruption, slow things down, create instability. I mean, completely ditching SpaceX seems unlikely. They're too integrated.
Right.
But even dialing back reliance or adding hurdles could have major ripple effects, not just for NASA missions, but the whole commercial space industry.
Okay, this really gets to the heart of it then. The bigger question hanging over all this: should space even be privatized like this? I mean, you can see the upsides, right? Privatization clearly drives innovation. SpaceX proves that. They slashed launch costs by more than half compared to the old government rockets. That opens up space, makes more things possible, faster.
Oh, absolutely. The innovation argument is strong. The cost reduction is undeniable. But the risks, they're significant. And maybe we haven't fully grasped them yet. We're talking about for-profit companies ultimately responsible to shareholders or a single powerful CEO taking the lead in exploring other worlds, setting up communication networks, maybe even settlements.
Yeah, when you put it like that.
What happens if access to orbit becomes like prime real estate? What if resources on the moon, like water ice, which is crucial for fuel, are claimed by a corporation? Who gets to decide who owns the moon or Mars? These aren't science fiction questions anymore.
And the rules we have, are they up to scratch?
Not really. International law, like the Outer Space Treaty from the 60s, is pretty vague. It wasn't designed for this era of massive private space activity. So you have situations like Musk controlling thousands of Starlink satellites, essentially running a huge chunk of global comms infrastructure, with relatively little specific international oversight tailored to that kind of power.
And they plan to launch way more satellites, right? Hundreds of thousands, potentially.
That's the plan for Starlink and other proposed constellations.
Which raises even more issues. Space debris, for one. The risk of collisions goes way up. Are we just going to crowd low Earth orbits so much that it becomes unusable or dangerous? And astronomers are worried too, aren't they, about all these satellites interfering with telescopes on the ground?
Yes, that's a major concern for the scientific community. Light pollution from satellites interfering with observations of the distant universe.
Oh.
And then there's the militarization angle. What happens when a private company's assets, like satellites, become strategically important in a conflict? Does that company get drawn in? Can its assets be targeted? It blurs lines between civilian and military infrastructure in space.
So lots of potential downsides.
Definitely. But we also have to be realistic. Look at NASA's Artemis program returning humans to the moon. The landing system for Artemis. The human lander. It's SpaceX's Starship. NASA is depending on it. So you can critique the model, but you can't deny that SpaceX has pushed the whole industry forward in ways government programs alone probably couldn't have, or at least not as quickly.
Okay, so it's complicated. Benefits, risks, dependency. Where does that leave us? What's the path forward look like?
Well, it seems like the future probably isn't all government or all private.
Yeah.
It's likely got to be some kind of balanced cooperation.
Makes sense. What does that balance look like, ideally?
Ideally, governments, agencies like NASA, they need to stay central. They set the long-term vision, the big scientific goals, they fund the risky basic research, and crucially, they provide public oversight and ensure transparency. Keep it aligned with, the public good.
And the private companies?
They could be fantastic partners, bringing innovation, efficiency, driving down costs. But, and this is the important part, they need to operate within clear rules. We need updated international agreements, we need strong regulations, and we need a real public conversation, democratic input on who gets to shape this next frontier and how.
So it's not just about letting the market decide everything in space.
I don't think we can afford to. The stakes, controlling access, resources, potentially the future of humanity off-world, they're just too high to leave solely to corporate interests without robust guardrails.
Okay, so wrapping this up, it's clear Elon Musk and SpaceX have totally changed the game, revolutionized space travel, built this private space superpower, no denying it.
Absolutely. But his sheer influence, his political engagement, the scale of what SpaceX now controls, it forces us to ask some really fundamental questions. As that line between public interest and private enterprise keeps blurring in space, we as a society really need to decide, do we want the final frontier owned and operated mainly by governments, by corporations, or can we find a way for it to be truly for all people under some kind of shared governance?
Yeah, that's the core question. And maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. Think about it: control over thousands, maybe soon hundreds of thousands of satellites, managing global communication, maybe even playing roles in warfare. What does it mean when that power rests largely in private, unelected hands? Does that feel right? As we reach for the stars, should space remain a public commons driven by exploration and science for all? Or is private innovation, with all its speed and disruption, the essential key to unlocking our future beyond Earth? Something to think about.